Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this Just Not Your Day podcast. This week, we're going to be talking through Territory Wars. We will also be looking at some of the capital maps going into this new season. This week, we are joined by special guest GHoStEx. Would you like to introduce yourself?
So yeah, I'm GHoStEx. I am the most hated man in CB. Probably also known as the leader of Eden for however many seasons, and I will try to share my knowledge on this shitty mode.
So going into them, what would you say is one of your first experience of Territory War? Let's go with that first.
My first experience. Well, this is over probably 2 years ago, so it's quite a while ago. But I was in a very small house. I think I was about level 50. It was called Legione Romana for Italian house, and I was intercepting for the Eden coalition basically. I
You
was
intercept dog.
honestly I had no units. I think I had like pike militia and some other thing.
That's all
It
you
was
needed for
more
Territory Wars
like
back then, though, right?
exactly,
It
yeah.
was so
So
broken back then.
it was back in the start of season 2. So I
Mm.
was in a group of like Zilly. I think Zilly still plays the game. A lot of people that you guys might not know, but Heat Freak, Devilish, some pretty big names back then, but obviously they don't play the game anymore right now. But yeah, I was just a level 50 little dog intercepting my pike militia. But yeah,
I
what
remember
did
about
you make
yours?
of that?
had a few runs then.
What did you make of that as a TW experience?
It wasn't too good. I'm not gonna lie.
No.
That's why after that TW, I reached out to the old leader of Eden, Almart or Lord Zayun, and I asked him very nicely if he could take me in because I wanted to play a bit more competitively, basically.
And then what happened?
Well, and then somehow it took my level 75 account in, and I started playing. I started playing in little villages and fights like this. But the the most, I guess the part that I loved the most was Lord Zion making groups on a piece of paper and telling us where to go before territory war. Because I mean, I don't know about other houses, but back then we weren't really using spreadsheets or anything, so the leader would just know like who the players were and where he wanted them. So Zhao, for example, had everyone on a piece of paper and he was telling people where to go individually. It was quite fun.
I'm surprised you say even season 2, because I mean, just thinking back, I would have been in Were Rabbits at the time, and even then they were using spreadsheets and everything for all the
Yeah.
groups and stuff. So I'm
I mean,
surprised
Eden
that
was
even
more, I don't want to say casual, but they were definitely not on the level of rabbits or anything like that back
yeah.
then. Yeah.
What about you, Drayton? What's your earliest memories?
Earliest memories is leaving Orgolia, running in the open world, and getting mass intercepted by people while I was getting to the meet point. And that was my first territory war, pretty much for 45 minutes to an hour. I was terrified to move in the open world. I was basically told, right, you need to get to this place. What's the free city in the bottom left of the Orgolia region? Ostaria.
Oh,
Yeah,
Freetown?
whatever that one is. It might even be called like Freetown.
yeah, I think I might be Freetown.
Yeah, I basically had to get there, and I set off 2 minutes into territory war, and I just about made it there by the end because I didn't know what I was doing. No one told me what I was doing, and I was just kind of clicking. That was my first one. And then it was the Pike Militia, Spear Sergeants, and maybe Imperial Pikes were kind of the units I rushed to actually become effective in TW.
Yeah, Imperial Pikes back then were crazy, I'm not gonna lie. If you had Reapers and Imperial Pikes back then, you were vibing, honestly. You were one of
Yeah,
the best players just based on the units you had.
those Pike Militia were deadly. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens now, because I was there one of the units that are getting the mastery in this upcoming season now, so they're getting a lot more bonus stats on them, so they could be like an actual meta unit again, which would be interesting.
What about you,
yeah,
Temple?
so
What was your first experience?
yeah, I mean, one of my first experiences was I started in the Anliang region, and this was back in obviously pre-season, so this is when every region was open. And so one of my first territorial experiences was having to run from Anliang all the way across through the Borderlands and over to Orgolia because the house I was in decided to help out a house that was in Orgolia. So I had to run all the way through there to get across to Orgolia to have fights. And this was back when people only had blue and green units as well. So I was running around with like bow riders and things like that, just running around trying to get across the other side of the map. So that was good fun. Just a small little house of like 10, 15 guys fighting these like huge coalitions at the time, helping out with that, it was good fun. It was a lot of fun.
Was there a moment when you kind of went, okay, now I want to give up my Tuesday and my Saturday evenings for this? What was that moment where you went, oh, this is something I really want to do a lot more competitively?
To be fair, I think with me it was just always from the start, because I think when I first started playing, I think I was unemployed when I first started playing, and so I had a lot of spare time. So I was just playing the game like all day, every day, and so that was just another game mode to me. So I was free; I wasn't dropping anything for it. I was just, it was there. And then because I started off like that, that just became a norm for me. It was just every Tuesday and Saturday. That's what I'm doing. So I even had it like when I first started jobs. I was like, well, I can't ever work overtime on Tuesdays or Saturdays, and they were like, why? I was like, I just can't. I've got other commitments. So yeah, it's just incorporating my life from them because it just started out like that.
For me,
What about you guys?
it was basically, I think it was COVID time, so obviously I wasn't giving any time up because I was stuck in my house regardless. But in the end of the day, even now, I think one of the main reasons why I played the game as a whole is because of territory war. I just enjoy the fact that there's, I don't know, back then I guess 1,000 people, but now I guess 500 people playing at the same time with basically one objective in mind. So I guess that's what makes me want to play. The fact that obviously there's more than just using your units. There's like strategies, there's like diplomacy and all this stuff. I think that's the main thing that keeps me going, really.
I think is that it means something as well, right? If you compare it to sieges, for example, at the end of a siege, that win or lose, there's not really any difference, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in territory wars, there's that pressure. There's if I lose this, that could lose us the whole season for our alliance. If I win this, we could demoralize. There's a lot more pressure. There's a lot more riding on it in those. So it's a lot more intense, and there's a lot more like commitment, I guess, behind it, right? Because in sieges, obviously you can't queue 15v15 anyway, but there's not as much commitment there. There's not as much team play. Whereas this is like highly organized, structured fights where you
Yeah.
essentially control the entire field, especially if you're a shot caller like the two of us GHoStEx. Like you control that whole fight, and so there's a lot
And
more
it's
riding
fun.
on it, and you have a lot more
You
control
get
over it.
you get bragging rights, which obviously you don't get when you win sieges, which is obviously a big plus for a
Well,
lot of
some people think they do.
yeah, well,
Very true. So you mentioned shot calling there. Well, what kind of led you both down that path? Was there people that you followed by example, or did you try and do things your own? Because both of you are quite notorious on E1 as some of the better shot callers we have. Temple, you've also done it in tournament settings. Ghost, I think you've done it for a number of seasons as well as reluctantly done it for a few seasons. So what kind of led you into that role within house structures anyway?
I mean, I think it was never my intention to be a shot caller. Obviously, you play the game to play the game in the end, right? I played for around 6 seasons as a player only, right? Not as a shot caller, but it really did depend on the need for one in the house I was playing in, which was Eden. Obviously, our second raid at the time didn't have a shot caller, and I know how meaningful obviously a shot caller was for a fight, and knowing that I'm the one of the guys that obviously speaks the most and stuff like this, I thought I would be best suited for the job, basically.
Temple?
Yeah, I think a big thing for me is communication, right? And I don't want to shit talk the community at all, but there are a lot of the community are quite quiet. They're not the most outspoken of people when it comes to actually in fights, which you will all know from when we're having in territory wars. There's always those people that will just get on with the job and sit there in silence and get on with it, and there's those that will talk about it, and there's those like myself and GHoStEx that will be communicative enough that we can move into these positions. I'd always kind of done it from an early day, just from the houses I was in when I first started. And as much as I hate to say it, I actually have Sama to thank for me being a shot caller and getting as prolific as I did. Because when I got into Were Rabbits, he accepted me into it after doing a match in death matches with. There was like me and a group of 3 others that were trying to get in. He joined a group with us. We did a death match, and I ended up shot calling us during the death match. And he basically got me and was like, "Yep, you guys are in, and I want you to be a shot caller." And almost straight away tried to push me into assisting with the shot calling. I wasn't like a standout shot caller from the start. I was like a support shot caller that would be in there to help the second raid of rabbits, I think it was at the time. I can't remember who shot caller was at the time. But yeah, so I would just step in when he wasn't there, or when he was being a bit quiet in the fights, I'd step in as well. So kind of just worked my way into it like that. But it was just a need for it, really, and I just ended up taking that step into it. And yeah, all thanks to Sama.
Who were some of the more notable shot callers that you played under?
Nah, it's definitely Viriato. For me, till this day, even if he hasn't played or shot called in a while, if he does come back, he'll still be the best shot caller in the game, hands down.
Why'd you say that?
He's just like he's an overall very smart guy. Like not only as a CB shot caller, but obviously he's done it for other games. He's done it for he's done coaching for Overwatch, League, all this kind of stuff. He's just very very smart in what he does, and he's very clear with what he says. And when he does shout and stuff, you can I don't know, you can I guess you can feel the energy when he shot calls. Like it makes you want to push, if you know what I mean. It's like I don't know if it's just a me thing, but whenever he shot called, you would everyone would just play much better. Like for me, as I said, he's definitely the best shot caller I've ever heard or played under.
Do you have any examples of moments where, because he shot called, things went differently to if someone else had shot called?
Yeah, I'd say in a lot of our fights, he was the one that pushed us to the win or pushed us to actually win a push. It's just I can recall, for example, when we attacked through Varus against DTI in season 7, and we took X off them in 3 minutes. That's like that was a crazy achievement for anyone, and it was all due to obviously his strat and his shot calling and him pushing us to push past the point and obviously to cap X. So for me, I don't think anyone else could have done that.
It was kind of unheard of at the time, wasn't it? So.
Yep.
Temple?
I mean, I don't want to talk badly about people, but I haven't really worked under the best shot callers because obviously I was in Rabbits, and Rabbits wasn't really known for having the best shot callers. It was known for having just the top players at the time, and they kind of won through that. So shot caller wise, obviously had Sama and Tiggs, who were just average. I guess they weren't anything to like really go crazy about because they didn't have to do a lot because we had just the best players in the game with the best units at the time. It was just very dominant because of that. The other one was Jello, who love him to bits, great guy, and he was a decent shot caller, but a lot of his shot calling was just push, 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 which was why the house ended up being called Push or Kick when we made that house, because that was kind of his known thing. But again, like they're decent enough, but they're not like standout shot callers. And I say that's probably one regret I've had is not playing under the likes of Viriato with his shot calling, because I've heard that he's a very good shot caller. I've never seen it myself, but I've heard from a lot of different people that he is a fantastic shot caller. So I would have liked to have experienced that. Obviously, I've had the likes of like Dunkel and Sesu and stuff with being in houses with them that I've seen them play as well, but it's not really the same because I've kind of been there to assist shot calling, or I've just been there spectating from the outside. I haven't been in the fight with them, kind of thing. So I've kind of just done my own thing from the start.
If there was some advice that you could give to people that are looking to shot call now or are listening to this and are shot callers, anything in particular, like maybe one or two key things that you think they should pay attention to that they might not necessarily be doing? Like we can say talk clearly or don't just say push, but is there anything else in particular?
I think the main thing as a shot caller is you need to react in according to what the enemy shot caller is doing. That's like as I've probably mentioned many times, shot calling is like playing a chess game. You try to counter what the enemy shot caller is doing, or out in game terms, you try to out rotate whatever the enemy shot caller sends his players to obviously have an advantage that way. And I think the other main thing that most people don't do is listen to their players. For me, in you can be the best shot caller, but you can only see so much of the battlefield. You need the people inside that are actively fighting, telling you what's going on and whether they have enough to push forward, or if there's a danger, for example, that you haven't seen.
I agree with that, but then I think that also leads into another fact that part of being a good shot caller is having a good communicative team as well, because you can only do so much. There have been times when I've been shot calling. I said, "How is this point looking?" Because I can't see anything. Because especially when we had those few weeks where it was really laggy and you couldn't zoom in. Like, how does it look on that point? Complete silence. So to be a top shot caller, you also need to have a top team underneath you, or at least a team that communicates with you when you need that. And I'd say a big thing is just learning the maps, learning the spawn points on the maps, because a lot of them you can do sort of bait and rotate kind of plays, or you can abuse the spawns on certain maps where you can push one way to then respawn on the other side when you guys are dying, so it's like pulling the enemy away. And like GHoStEx said, it's playing that chess game with the enemy shot call as well. You're trying to not just react to their plays, but trying to preemptively act against them, so you can sort of see how they're playing it. You think, right, well, if I do this, they're going to go there, so I need to go there instead. Trying to play that chess game in your head and being able to react fast. You could make a call 1 second, 2 seconds later, that's the wrong call. So you need to be able to react fast, and your team needs to be able to react fast with you as well.
I think you really see that when you tab during a match, or during a territory war in particular. If you see the enemy have got full Forte stop bringing out cav, and vice versa. If you see an enemy are pushing with all cav, you need that anti-cav, so you've got to get it. And that's something that a lot of players don't even think about. A lot of players have their fixed loadouts, and they're the only things they ever play. And the ability to adapt.
Yeah, I feel like, and as a player, like the first thing a player should do, and I don't know if I'm moving too fast or something, but that's what I do. Like if I'm not show calling and I'm playing, the first thing you do when you're about to load into a battle is tab. You tab, you see. So if on the spreadsheet it says your first unit is Forte Brachos, but you tab and there's 15 Forte Brachos in the game, then you don't want to bring another one, right? You want to try to bring, and also obviously you see what units the enemy has, so you bring something according to that, right? And a lot of people don't, even in top raids, for example, in like the raid I played in last season, like the Arcadia Metco's bed raid, a lot of people didn't do it. Like they knew that they had Fortes or like Maidens as first unit, and that's what they were coming in with. And
Yeah.
it's tough because you get to a point where you have like 15 Fortes into a battle, and obviously, as a shot caller, there's only so much you can do. You can't tell people what unit you want them to take, right?
Yeah, I think jumping on that as well, I think the worst one for me is when it comes to specialist units. And there have been times when, as a shot caller, I've pressed tab and I've gone, right, guys, why the fuck do we have 4 sets of Falcos out right now? Like, you guys can press tab as well when you're loading in. Like, why the fuck do we have 4 sets of Falcos out? Come on, use your brains. 2 of you swap off, 3 of you swap off, depending what map is and what the playstyle is.
The weird thing is that usually in a raid, you have max 4 players playing Falcos to begin with. So the fact that those 4 Falco players have been in the fight that long to all be together and not changing units is crazy.
Yeah, I think you need to have one big thing for shot callers. You need to have the confidence to be able to call people out on shit as well. Because it's like cases like that could be the case where that person, they're down to their last unit. It's like, well, then either suicide or I'm going to kick you. Then, like either suicide or I'll eject from the battle. Like you're useless right now. And you need to be able to challenge people on some of their decisions. And it could be after the war as well. A lot of people. I haven't done it for a little bit now, but you do like review sessions of things after territory war, where you look back at the footage and you need to call people out on things. And it's not to say that they're bad or anything, but it's to make sure that you can then say, look, this was a bad decision. Let's not do this next time. I'm not trying to give you shit. I'm not trying to like point you out in front of everyone and make you feel bad. I'm trying to point it out so that we can not do this again, not make the same mistake, improve and get better for the next time. And you'll need that as an early shot call, I think. If you're in sort of like a mid-level house, you'll need to be able to try to educate people as well on how to be a better player. Because I may not be the most individually skilled player, but I have the knowledge of what you do need to do to be a skilled player. I know where I can call people out on certain things.
Yeah, I think one of the big things also being able to take criticism or stuff from your players. For example, there's been instances where I've been wrong because, as I said, you don't get to see much as on overview. And for example, on my banana clip when I shot banana, the guy that I shot at wasn't a grape shot while the enemy was capping our last point. But what I didn't know is that his units were on last point, killing the enemy hero. So obviously, after the fight, he did tell me, "Look, I had my units there and stuff," and I apologized to him because at the end of the day, if you're not able to accept, obviously, criticism and stuff like this, I don't think you'll go far as a shot caller.
Yeah, and the way I see it as well is it's like, as a shot caller, it's my responsibility whatever happens in the fight. If we win, great. I helped shot call that to victory. If we lose, that's on me. I don't put individual blame on players, even if it's. I mean, there was one case where I did the old Snugs incident back in Anliang in season whatever it was when they got off the point and watched the guys cap our home base. But I will always put the blame on me. I'm like, right, guys, whatever, we lost it. That's my bad. We'll go on to the next one, kind of thing. Like you have to be able to take that yourself, because at the end of the day, you are commanding these players, and a lot of the time it will be your call that ends up messing things up. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is the players. But I think as a shot caller, you are responsible for whatever happens in that fight, regardless of if someone messed up or not.
It's what I hate. It's one of the biggest things I hate about being a shot caller. So, like, if you win, you helped your raid win. If you lose, it's your fault, basically. And it's how I felt after Anliang. Like after Daicheng, after all those battles, after obviously winning so much as a shot caller, then it gets to basically me letting everyone down because I was the one that obviously was leading when we lost the capital.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just comes with it, doesn't it? Really. I mean,
Yeah,
if we weren't ready to accept that kind of stuff, we wouldn't be in the positions we are.
Yep.
I mean, it's like,
nothing worth having in life comes easy, and they're very difficult things to do, particularly when you then have to shoulder the responsibility.
Yeah, and not just being a shot caller, being a house lead as well, Ghost. You would have had that over the years. You know, you wouldn't be in a position like this for this long without being able to deal with shit from people.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think one of my early experiences with Territory Wars that kind of really changed how I wanted to play as a player was after Territory Wars, we'd watch footage. Like a couple of people would record and we'd say, oh yeah, what happened during this part? And someone would say, oh, I had that. They'd throw it up. We'd put Spotify playlists on the Discord bots. We'd do like karaoke and stuff, and then we'd pause it and we'd talk about these moments. And this was back on EU2, and I think we were in the House of Vanguard at the time. And a couple of those guys who were not used to playing with us just hung around and were like, wait, do you do this after every territory war? Most of them, we just hang out, chat, like break down what went wrong, what went well, and try and avoid it next time. And just give the feedback to people when they, whether they want it or not, try and give it in a positive way to basically like improve everyone together. And we did that, and it encouraged like the growth and development of those players that we then kind of indoctrinated into the idea that have a debrief, like watch it, work together. Everyone improved together, and it was really nice. As well as you make new friends by hanging out and doing silly things like karaoke on Discord with each other.
It's something Origin used to do when we first started. You know, we used to have weekly training sessions. We used to do a lot of reviews. Once we'd grown the raids and the core members, we stopped doing it after a while. We haven't done it for a couple of seasons now. We used to have like 2 days a week. We'd do training sessions, and we would literally have 15v15 games of all Origin. This was before we had custom lobbies. This was just in sieges. We all just queue up together in groups of 5, and we literally had a whole 30-man lobby of just Origin because we had like 60 people queuing up at the same time. It was insane, and we had some really good games out, and so had some good fun. But we just didn't need to do it more towards the end. We had some review sessions still, but we didn't do these big training sessions because most of the core had that knowledge, so there was no reason to do it. And a lot of the veterans just weren't doing that kind of thing. So
I think another thing I learned when I then migrated from EU2 to EU1 and I joined Eden, and it was a concept that I'd not even faced before. Like I'd done plenty of work with spreadsheets of like, these are the units people are going to be taking, this is the weapon we'd like them to play. But recognizing that there are phases within battles, and the more preparation you can do to acknowledge that these phases exist. If we think about standard sieges, you've got the walls, and then you've got afterwards, so just on the ground. Very different units are needed to be on the walls versus fighting in the streets. And Eden was setting us up with what we really should be taking. It didn't have to, it wasn't like definitive, but like these are the very much recommended units. And that was an acknowledgement that you need to be adaptive, and you need to adapt as players as well as strategists as you work your way through the territory war phase. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was an insight into how to run things that I wasn't aware of prior to coming to E1.
Yeah, it was.
And
It was quite
I thought
fun
Eden did it.
the...
I thought Eden did it really well.
Yeah, I think we still have it now in a spreadsheet where there's like units that. So you have a column where it says like the unit you have to use on war, and then there's a second column where it says after war. So that's the unit you take after we've lost the war or whatever of the GHoStEx basically. So yeah.
Whereas me, I'm a much lazier shotcaller than that, I'll be honest with you. I literally have a starting setup, and then that's pretty much it. And like my reserves will just be, this is what you should take. Either this is first, this is second, or this is third, as long as you have like, you know, an anti-cav, a cav, and whatever it is for the map at the time. But I just find that a lot of the time, because there are some raids, like for example, Dunkelraid will have an exact setup for every single member. will have an exact unit set up and what they need to bring. And fair enough, that works. I just don't want to spend the time doing it. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I just don't want to sit down for an hour before each territory war doing units for every single individual person when I think most of the time you don't need it. For capitals, it's different. I can understand doing it for that because they want to be spot on with everything. But especially with a raid like what I've had the last couple of seasons, I've had some players in there that are, very low level, don't have all the units, aren't very active, don't have this current season unit. So I'm not going to sit there and say, you have to take this unit. I will say, this is the rough guide. This is ideally what I want you to take. But then it's down to your group leader. If you don't have that unit, they can tell you something else that's similar. Or you can bring something else, as long as it's not complete shot. You're not bringing like Rattan Rangers or something, for example, into a siege fight. Like, I'm fairly flexible with it. To an extent. So I just think it's a lot better because I don't want to force people on certain things. And a lot of the time, the fights are so different. I think for defense, you can definitely plan a lot more. But for attack, it's a lot harder because you don't know how the enemy's going to defend. And that can very massively affect how you're going to attack.
We mentioned it there. From a player's point of view, what makes a good territory war player?
Yes. You don't really need like hyper carries or people that perform well in like sieges and stuff. That's what people think is a good territory war player. People tend to go for stats rather than actually playing territory war. You basically need someone that understands your call, someone that speaks. That's a big plus, and people that are not scared of dying. Basically, like as I mentioned, you don't want to sit there and kill 200 units when you could have cycled 2 or 3 people to wipe the enemy, if you know what I mean. So
and for me, I think that's how most cities are lost, right? Most fiefs are lost that way. When you look in the top side, because you'll have those few players that they're the guys that are sat on the resupply farming kills, whatever, or they're the ones with the specialist units. Are like, I don't want to die because I've got 25 hero kills and 200 unit kills. I want to stay till the end and get the like glory for that. And that's normally when you lose the cities. Like most cities are lost like in the last minute or two because your guys are getting lazy, they're getting a bit cocky, think, oh, it's nearly over, we're nearly done, we're not going to die. Like you need soldiers in there that know when to die and know that dying is important. Like deaths are more important normally in territory wars than you trying to get kills. Like knowing when to die and where to die a lot of the time is more important.
Yeah, massively. The way you die is a choice that you should try and make when it's forced upon you. Fair enough, but a lot of times you have a choice of when you die. Anything from you, Ghost, on that side? I think we'll continue this a bit more, but what are your thoughts?
As I said, as long as people listen you, and I guess another big thing is players trusting you as a shot caller in general. There's a lot of instances where a lot of players might think they know better than you, but in the end, you have the wider view. You see the whole field. You don't just see what's in front of you as players do. So it's quite a big thing to have trust for your shot caller. But that, I guess, that just comes with time, basically, with people being in your house for a while and knowing how good or how bad you are, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way thing as well, right? Because I think for me as a shot caller, like the guys that are fighting under you need to listen to you 99% of the time, because there will be times where they see something that you can't see and they need to act on that instantly. So it's a two-way trust thing, but definitely if the shot caller is telling you to do something, you should do it. Unless there are very rare occasions where you go, actually, I can do this instead. And as long as they're communicating and they say that, you go, okay, fair enough, I couldn't see that, go for it. But 99% of the time, you'll be planning something in your head as a shot caller that they can't see because they haven't been holding down tab, they haven't seen where the enemy's moving. And you're going, right, you need to push here now, you need to go block that supply, you need to go push this, you need to go suicide over here, will be more important than the thing they're thinking is better.
Supply points are always a really contentious one in territory wars. Actually, contentious in every part of sieges, let's be honest. It's so often that players get baited into going back to that supply point to get another unit out, and there's a single short sword, or there's a dual blade that's dancing back and forth on the point. Is there any examples when that play, you can maybe name individuals if you want, or maybe name like specific battles, where the idea of blocking supply point was almost a priority, and if you didn't do that, you had no chance of winning a fight? Can you guys think of any of those?
Well, I'm sure GHoStEx remember the Java incident, right?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. The most notorious one is Arani, where basically what happened is that Origin was attacking Eden, and we were fighting pretty heavily for the supply point on the western fort. And Java just casually walked behind the door on supply point where he couldn't be stunned or attacked or anything, and was able to block our resupply from there, and we couldn't do anything. And because obviously it was the first time that that had happened, and everyone was eager to like kill him and get him off our supply, we ended up committing too many people to it, and they ended up snowballing from supply down to our last point and capping the city after a few minutes. And that was quite big, honestly, because till then, I guess our raids were on. I don't want to say, yeah, they were equal. You know, we were defending, they were attacking. They were very good fights, but that in that instance, like a lot of stuff changed. Like we realized that obviously committing that hard to a supply fight, we should have never committed that hard to a supply fight. But obviously, the way he had won it at the time seemed a bit fishy to us.
Controversial, should we
Yes.
say?
Well, but then the revenge came, the battle after, so it's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
So they've obviously moved a couple of supply points to different locations on different maps to avoid such issues.
Mhm.
The changes within territory war mechanics, there's been a lot of them. That could be new spawn locations, alternate spawn locations, new breaches on certain maps, as well as moving X itself and home point in cases. Compared to the early seasons of territory war, what would you say some of the most significant changes have been? And if you can date them as well, that'd be really good.
Well, good luck doing that. But
Yeah.
I feel like the addition to the breach on the western city, I think it's a very good touch to territory wars, because those maps are very hard to take. X is okay if you can get a good wall push going, but last point is very hard. So obviously you wanna try and get as much time as you can to get last point. So adding that breach and making X a bit easier to attack is definitely a very good touch. And I think another big one is one of the biggest one is getting putting the respawn point for the attackers closer on to Ruvarosh. Because the old one was very, very far. I think with the old one, to get from the old spawn point to last point, it was about 55 seconds with Cav.
Yeah, it was like a whole minute, or I
Yeah,
think it was maybe a minute and a half with melee units. I think something like that. It
exactly.
was
That
insane.
was insane.
You know, adding the tower on there as well, like the change they've done to the maps has been really good. Because I mean, like you said, looking at the breaches on some of these maps now, before you had those breaches, they were almost impossible to take them against a good raid.
Yeah.
Just because how they were designed, you know, it's very difficult. I would like to see a breach added to the Hidden City map personally for Territory Wars, because that is, again, is a very difficult map to actually get inside that initial outer wall. But yeah, I like some of the changes. I think for me, some of the biggest changes for Territory Wars is just the pre-war section that we have now, because obviously historically it was you had to fight for resource nodes, or you had to fight. It was a click war if you got in there. You know, you had all these pre-fights you'd be fielding out in the open world before to try and get the first fight. Whereas now it's just, you know, whoever farms that most prestige can declare and then lock anyone out from it. So it's very different.
I had this conversation with some other guys a few weeks ago, and I remember saying that it's a very controversial one, but if territory war back then, back when rabbits was so OP and stuff, wasn't based on who could click the gate the fastest, maybe rabbits would have had they would definitely have had a harder chance of winning the season than they would have had obviously back then, because as I said, back in the day, like season 2, I think even season 3, there wasn't any like prestige or anything like that, or like nodes or anything. It was just based on who could click the city, or for example the gate of the Conquerors city before the other raid. So for instance, you would get on all 4 gates back then when we used to fight against rabbits and stuff. You would get like 10 rabbits, 2 Eden, 2 wild blood, and then one random from some other house. So it was basically based on who could click the fastest. And then
Yeah,
I
but
guess
you would have like 100 people on each gate, right? All
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
click into it. It was insane.
So it
And you
was
had all people were like figuring out if you put the camera in a certain angle, you could load into the city
it
faster
was
into
too
the
much
menus, all that kind of
RNG in
stuff.
my opinion. Like it was just
Yeah.
based on who could click the fastest.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing with the outpost meta.
Yeah,
It was
with the resource nodes and everything, it was exactly the
exactly.
same, wasn't it? It's just a click. Although I have to say, talking about outposts, Eden magically always got the outpost down first,
Yeah.
and I don't know how that happened. Every single time, you would always see wherever Eden was fighting, they would always get that outpost down first, and I don't know how you did it.
We used to have like 9 or 10 people. Everyone that could have the role.
Yeah,
Just
every
get
house did
ready.
that, but you
Yeah,
always got it down first.
I
Didn't
don't know.
matter
We
where
would
it
just
was or who you were fighting, you were
what
always
was it
first.
called? You know when you just get like build I think it's what does it say? Build siege or some shit when you're in open world. Like we would just have like our finger on the enter key and on the left click, and then we just spam it like 20 seconds before like 7 or whenever the territory war starts. You just fucking spam enter like 2,000 times a second, and we will end up getting it first all the time. Well, to be honest, it was Blade Shot that always had it. I don't know how, but yeah.
I
He was
remember there was
clearly
also
hacking.
a list of names of enemy houses.
Oh yes. Back then
Like
we used to intercept
these are the
everyone
people.
that had like a marshal role or something, so that they couldn't click for the outpost. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I think every has that because I mean, even Origin and stuff had that as well early on. And I'm sure Rabbits had it as well, where it's like these are the guys that are going to be trying to build the outpost, and we'd always try
Yeah,
and put our officers not on that role. But then it was like, who could you trust to actually give a role and try and build this that knew what they were doing and weren't just going to be
yeah.
like,
We used to
huh?
have like stack all our players on tops because back then you couldn't click on the player you wanted. Like, so if a player was hiding in a thief, for example, you couldn't click for his name. So
Or in a
even
field camp.
yeah,
Hiding in field camps
Yeah,
was so fun.
you built the field camp early and then just hid people in.
yeah,
But I remember seeing people like Nemeo and Brent running around, just trying to avoid being intercepted
yeah.
for the first couple of minutes, or
Or
the
you'd see
minutes
them like
prior.
hide it, like they'd be in like the thief next door, like on the edge, trying to hide out of vision, and then just pop in just at the last second to try and build it.
True, true. There's some other changes, like they have removed border crossing, which obviously sped up the process, but then you can't hide people in the border crossings anymore.
Mhm.
I think that was a big one. One of my fondest memories in Territory War was hiding in a village behind the back lines of essentially an enemy's front, and we knew that they were going to come and attack us, so we sent 25, 30 people way deep in behind and hid in a village that was controlled by one of their coalition that hadn't locked it to enemies. So we hid in there, and we'd hid on on top of an archway. It's one of the desert cities. We hid on top of the archway. So when a guy loaded in just to check that no one was in there, he didn't look up and see us. He only looked at level, or his eye level, and he completely missed us. And we then attacked and took one of the hidden city maps, maybe Shaken in Maoyang. No, that can't
Valley
be right.
Fortress, Shaken. So it
Yeah.
can't be that.
One of the hidden city maps in Maoyang, which is obviously very easy to defend, quite hard to attack, and we managed to take it before they could bring their reinforcements back.
What are the hidden city? I think it's Nanlu and
It's one north of
Nanlu.
Nightingale.
Yeah, there's Nanlu and the one next to Mumbai.
So one
There's
just to
another
the
one.
left of Mumbai,
Yeah,
isn't it?
North up and left of Mumbai
yeah.
on the
Yeah,
map.
yeah. I mean, I've done similar stuff with the border crossing as well. Like we had done it a couple of times where we just hidden in the border crossing. You go in, you could like go to one of the sides in one of the corners because no one would ever go to the sides. They just run straight through the middle of it, and now you can't do that anymore. Or like one of my fondest moments was when we all joined into, was it Eternals, to take Reginopolis off DTI,
Yeah,
and we'd all gone inside Reginopolis and were like hiding in one of the corners, being in our house still. So they were just like, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. They hadn't seen us. And then once we're in there, we all left, applied to their house, got accepted, and just sat in the corner. Then it all just loaded out together and attacked. It was like, it was such a satisfying moment because none of them came to check. We were like literally just tucked right in the corner where the B breach is now when you're attacking that map. That we just sat in the corner there and no one came anywhere near us. It was like, nobody move, nobody move. If you move, they'll be able to hear us. Just don't just sit in the corner. Just stay still. Just stay still. It was
I mean,
such a fun moment.
we have like tactics now to basically mimic the same thing, I guess, with the reset location to the capital, where you can make it look like you're attacking on the other side of the map, and then you just TP back to the capital and go back to your thief or attack a different objective. Or
Yeah.
like Eden used to do, we would just send like 30 people to a thief to make it look like we were attacking. Then like 2 minutes before the war starts, we would swap to line two and then just run back to our thief, and the enemy had already rotated all their people to the city to defend and stuff like this. There's a lot of
Yeah, I
ways to
would.
bait people, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Eden was always strong at. I don't know if it was necessarily intentionally done that way, but it always seemed to be that you would take the cities the furthest away from the capital. and you would let like the ones close to the capital or close to the middle be taken by your enemies, so that you would always have that threat of being able to go middle of the war. Well, we'll just teleport back to the capital and then attack your nearest city. And it was something you always have to watch out for. And it just always, I don't know if it was intentional, whether it just happened that way because of the layout of the land, but it always seemed to be that you would hold the land that was furthest away from the capital.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but obviously it's a big plus if you can attack something at the end of the war. Like after
Yeah.
all your fights are done, you can just reset location and attack. Although it does get very messy when you have everyone in the same fight, and like, yeah, it's crazy.
We used to always have to put someone inside the capital and just be sat there waiting, like, if you see any Eden loading in, just scream.
And they did, at times.
Definitely. And just for those that are listening that don't know what we're talking about, so if you there's a, I guess it's a bug, I guess you could say, which is using the reset location from if you press escape and go to help. So it doesn't always work. There's a certain way you can do it, which makes it always work. But basically, you can reset from anywhere on the open world back to the capital.
Yeah, I just have to be stuck somewhere, or well, not
Yeah,
stuck.
you basically need to walk onto a hillside.
Yeah. As long as the arrow when you click is red and your character doesn't move, it should work. I don't think it's a bug because it's meant to be
clever
for
use
when
of
you
game
get stuck.
mechanics.
But I guess it's a bit of an abuse of game mechanic, but we don't tell anyone.
No, it's just a clever use of game
Oh,
mechanics.
yeah.
Not abuse. It's a clever
Do you
use.
think it should stay in the game?
I think it's good because it allows more exciting stuff and more unexpected stuff. Because otherwise, Territory Wars is kind of a bit straightforward. You move from point A to point B. This allows some kind of counterplay, which is why I didn't like when they brought in the whole declaration thing, because you used to be able to just like sneak behind somewhere, suddenly attack one of their cities without knowing. Whereas now you can technically do that, but then anyone can join the fight. You don't have overview. You've got all those issues that come up with it. So I didn't like those changes, but yeah,
to be fair,
I do like the function.
I've been stuck in open world before, so without this, I would have still been there. So
yeah,
so
I remember the first time I
attacked
a gate of the capital.
Oh
the
yeah, you
Conquerors
get
City,
stuck inside.
you get stuck behind,
Yeah.
and you
If
then
the enemy
teleport.
owns it, you can't do anything. Yeah,
You get
can't
teleported back to No Man's Town, which is completely miles away from where you wanted to be.
For me, I would like I don't like the fact that big raids or strong raids can just attack anywhere they want across the map. Basically, I'd like a system where you can only attack thieves a certain distance from thieves you own, basically, to I guess allow smaller houses to survive a couple of territory wars until the enemy comes crawling towards them. But I understand that it's quite a complex mechanic to implement.
Obviously, with the introduction of resource nodes, outposts, prestige, and things like that, territory wars were no longer an hour; they were an hour and a half minimum. Like you had that extra half an hour beforehand, and I remember when that first got introduced, a lot of people stopped playing. A lot of people were happy to give up the hour, and because you can always get a fight right at the end, which could extend it to an hour and a half. But people were giving up 2 hours. A lot of people weren't willing to do that.
Sometimes more, because don't forget, like that's just when it starts. Normally you would meet like half an hour, sometimes even an hour before that if you're doing like big strats and things on a new map. Like I know some houses are meeting an hour before Territory Wars. Me personally, it's normally half an hour, sometimes even 15 minutes, if depending on what the fight is. But there are people that would meet an hour beforehand. So you'd meet up an hour beforehand, then you'd have the hour and a half of the fight. Sometimes that last fight goes on for an extra half an hour as well. So you could be doing like 2.5, 3 hours nearly of just Territory Wars twice a week, which is insane.
I think that's too much time.
I do like that they changed it in a way, but at the same time, for most people, for a lot of people, especially the veterans, this is the most important, the most fun part of the game that they have. So having that extended, is it a bad idea?
I feel like the casual players might not like it, because obviously, if you're a casual player, you don't really care about territory war as much, or I guess if your house isn't strong enough to compete for like big objectives, you don't care enough. But I feel like for tryhard players, I don't think they mind as much, obviously having to play a bit more. I know that for people that literally just log in for territory war, it might be a bit of a stretch, but for people like me, for example, that I play the game regularly, I have no issue coming half an hour, 1 hour before, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. It's a good and a bad thing. It really does depend on who you ask, I guess. For me, I like the game how it is now. Like you don't really have nodes or anything like that. You have You have outposts if needed, like if you have less influence, I guess. But other than that, I think it's the best, like the best starting mechanic we've had so far.
I think it is probably the best that it's been. I don't know if it's still right. I think there could still be work done to it.
Yeah.
What they could do, I don't know. But it's just this part of me that's just like it still doesn't feel quite right. But it's definitely the best it's been, I would say. Definitely with the whole prestige system.
Well, let's have a think over the next like half an hour of chatting and just see if we can come up with some ideas. Because I do agree, I think it's the best it's been. I feel like there's not really the need to do an outpost fight in 95% of territory wars. You might have
It's just
one
that
for the first one.
war, yeah, the first war in the main region. Because I think there's a few this
Yeah.
season with Arcadia as well. There's a couple of outposts that were down in the very first war, and after that, it's no need.
I mean, you do need something to tie break. If you know
Yes.
what I mean. Like there definitely has to be something because there's a high chance that everyone does their quest like at the start and everyone finishes everything. So a lot of houses, well, a few houses will be on the same prestige. So you definitely need something to, because obviously it's a bit weird if whoever declares first gets the first attack, right? Because once again, it's a click game then.
Yeah.
So you
I mean,
definitely
Quick
need
wars are not
tiebreak.
fun.
No, definitely not.
Unless you like
Yeah.
cookie clicker games, and in which case it might be your thing. But
Is there something that could be done in between the territory wars that dictate who gets first attack? Which
I mean, that's
like
kind of what we've got really with the prestige system now, right? Because there's the weekly quests that you have for it, the
Yeah.
house quests,
Yeah.
which is a big part
I
of that.
feel
Because
like
that does decide it. We've had these fights with Eden, as Origin versus Eden, the last couple of seasons, and it's always who can get those weekly quests done enough on that Monday, Tuesday. Because a lot of the time you wouldn't have it done in time. You would have one would have completed a couple more quests than the other, and that would then decide the start of the season, which a lot of the time would decide the end of the season. Because there's those couple of cities that are way more worth it than the others. So there is still that aspect there, but yeah.
I feel like you can't really put more territory war content not in territory war in this game because a lot of, as I said, a lot of the players you have now literally just log in to play territory war. So basically, the house that has less of those players and more obviously players that play the game would eventually have a bigger advantage, which is probably not the best thing to have.
But then that rewards activity in the game, so is that not something we should be looking towards to try
I
and
feel
increase the
like
longevity of the game?
for me personally, what we should be focused on is bringing back the old players that quit and the players that are on the verge of quitting, rather than obviously, of course, I love bringing new people in and keeping the people we have, but I'd like to bring the old people back and keeping people that are on the verge of quitting, as I said.
What would you say then? Let's just, for example, say two. So the two biggest things that you think would bring back these old players, or stop, maybe two things that would bring them back and two things that are stopping them from coming back.
Oh, I'll go first on this. For me, the thing that is stopping players coming back is when they left the game, they probably were competitively strong. They probably had a lot of up-to-date units, and even if you're away for one season, look at last season in particular, season 15. If you didn't have Crescent Monks and you didn't have Yan Yadao, you probably, well, you may well have felt very useless when it came to ranked, when it came to territory war, because that's all you saw. If you have this enormous, well, this time investment that you haven't given that sets you back, and you have no way of really gaining ground, because let's say they start into season 16, it's the Japanese season, we're going to have loads of players returning for that. They're going to look at the units that have gone since they left the game and have been introduced and just go, that is a mountain to climb. And it's just like a new player. The new player and the returning veteran player experience is honestly not that different, because
Yeah,
they've got so much to unlock, they've got so much time to invest, and the game is only getting longer, as it were. Like the end game is only getting further with this new mastery system, with all your units that you used to have maxed now being not maxed, and you've got
and
more improvements to make.
let's not forget there's 6 units in the new season as well. Admittedly, one is a mercenary unit, so you have to level that. But I think I agree with what you said. I think that the definitely coming back and having to level units is a thing. But I think going further than that, I think the bigger issue for me is just balance of the game.
Yeah,
Because I think if the game was in a more balanced state, it wouldn't matter that you didn't have those units because yeah, it'd be nice to have them, but you should be able to play your old units anyway. Within reason. If they left back in like preseason 1 or something and came back, it's a bit different. But I think that's the biggest thing for me is that. And then I think one of the biggest things for me that a lot of veterans left was the servers and how the server state was. With regards to ping, disconnect, desync, all that kind of stuff. So I think for me that's the two biggest things is balance and then just the quality of the hardware, should we say, behind the servers.
For me, priority should be making the units on the unit tree or units that are easily accessible. Obviously, not sorry. Let me rephrase it. Making the units that come every season in the battle pass or whatever not as OP as they are, and rather making the units that you can easily obtain through the normal unit tree.
But I would say they're heading there,
as a
right?
whole.
Like they are heading in that direction.
They tried until season 15.
Yes and no, because they've got the imp shields are a hell of a lot stronger now. They were usable last season. If it wasn't for the cav, they would be a decent meta unit. I mean, they still are in some cases. And I think with this new season going forward, from what I've seen on the PTR, as long as they maintain that sort of level, is that whilst these new units coming in are strong, they are like they're not a one and done kind of unit. They're not a one thing does all kind of unit. They're not like the Yanyo Cav, for example. These are units that are very strong in a certain scenario, but are also very easily countered. So most of them are very high damage, very good into Cav, a lot of them as well, but very high damage, but they also are very squishy, so you can easily burst them. So they lose a lot of the units.
For me, is unfortunately, like let's say you want to play Territory War. What units do you play in Territory War that are not seasonal units?
Maybe one Imp Shield.
Maybe Hussars.
That's it.
Maybe Cav, yeah, maybe Cav.
Yeah,
but...
maybe one Hussar, but even now you're just spamming 15 new Cav.
Yeah, but they are. I think they are heading there.
Maidens and new Cav and monks. That's it.
Like they are heading in the right direction. Next season we've got the Mastery coming in, and from what we've seen, it brings the Palace Guards and Halberd Sergeants back into a usable unit. I don't want to say meta because there's still more testing. We don't know if those figures are going to be the same for live.
Yeah.
But if they go down that way that they're heading, I think the game is heading in a very good direction. They are trying to bring back and bring back some of these older units into the meta and make the season units not quite as overpowered and just does everything. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, that's how they should be going, because even for new players, it's easier to get a unit for the unit tree than having to obviously maybe
100%.
get MVP, which might be harder for them since they're new players fighting against people that have the best units in the game.
Yeah. I mean, we touched on it in previous episodes. The amount of time that it takes to unlock all these seasonal units, and what season do you pick? Do you just work for trying to get a load of the purples and just ignore the goldens for a load of seasons to try and get as many units as possible, or do you try and just work on one? How do you decide on that? Because guides are outdated every season because different units come in meta every season with changes. It is such a huge hill to climb, which we have covered in previous episodes. So I don't want to go too much into it now, but they are definitely heading in the right direction from what I've seen. It just depends on whether what we've seen in the PTR is what they're going to bring to the live version. So we can only wait and see on that in this next Wednesday, isn't it? The new season starts next Thursday. Sorry.
Yeah.
At this point, I don't want to date the episode, but it is what it is. But Thursday, the new season starts, so I'm hoping it will carry on like it has been on the live server, because it was similar last season. The Yamato Cav were strong, but they weren't stupidly broken on the test server. They were counterable by a few units, and then they brought them to the live server and they tweaked their figures a bit, and they brought in this doctrine which then made them completely broken.
It hurts for me to say this, but it feels like every season the game has at least one unit, especially like a tier 5 unit, that is OP, because that obviously makes you want to spend more time, I guess, more money to unlock that unit and to be able to obviously be better in sieges or whatever you might be playing. So it's unfortunate, obviously,
I think it's not bad as long as it's not one of the new seasonal units that is that stupidly broken unit. I think if it's like one of the old honor tree units, or whether it's an old seasonal unit, it's still not ideal, but it's better because more people have it. I think it becomes unbearable when you just have, it's this new unit, this new season, so it gives the players a mentality of, they're just trying to get money. They just want it to be strong so people will buy it. That's what the community has that opinion of. And I don't want it to be that. And I hope it isn't that. But that is the overall feeling that you get. Because they just go, it wasn't strong enough in PTR, so we'll just make it stronger when it comes out. Now it's broken. So I'm interested to see what they do with the tier 5 this season, because on the PTR testing, it was strong in some scenarios, but it lost to a lot of units. And I'm worried they will just now overtune it, and so it's going to be broken when it comes out.
Yeah. Just want to address the point about players leaving because of server performance as well. How do we think it's doing server-wise at the moment?
I would have said it had gotten better, but then it feels like it's gotten worse this last season. You know, with the whole freezing at the end of games, I've heard more people saying about the game randomly closing. I've had it randomly close on me more times, even while streaming. You know, one stream it closed like 3 or 4 times in one stream. So I want to say it was getting better, and I still think it is in a better place than it has been. But I feel like it's more noticeable now because it had been good for a couple of seasons, at least from my opinion. And so now it feels like this last season kind of took a step back. Personally, that's what I think anyway. I don't know about you, Ghost. How do you think it's been?
For me, I haven't really had any issues apart from freezing in in the end of the game. But I think that the servers at the moment are probably in the best state they've been in a while. But there's still a lot of room for improvement, like with a lot of things that we've spoken about. I hate to say it, but it feels like a lot of the stuff is like is there but not quite there, if you know what I mean. Like it should.
Yeah.
There's still a bit to go until people and players in general be like, okay, this is good. You know, I'm happy with this, and I'll keep going with this.
Yeah, I think that's repeating a point we made earlier, which is that it's almost there, but there's something that's just off. Okay, territory war experience currently. Are there any changes that we think we should make, or we would suggest to be made, to make the overall experience for everyone? This is not just the people in your own house, but people in other houses, the people you're fighting against, as well as people you're not even going to fight against because they're in a completely different region. Is there anything that we think the changes that should be made towards affecting that experience?
I think biggest thing for me is just not have so many regions open. I think one of the biggest problems for me in the game, the current state it is now, is that there's just too many regions open and there's not enough fights happening. I mean, you look at last season, for example, in the main region, AI has held most of the land, like most of the, admittedly villages, but still, like there's no reason to take those villages. There's no small houses coming in trying to snipe them. And I think having less regions open is a healthy thing for the game. Because yes, you'll have those big houses and big alliances that are holding all the cities, but then you'll have small houses picking up villages. You'll have people trying to join these fights. You'll have, maybe more coalitions being made by small houses to come and try and compete with numbers against some of the bigger houses. But going to this next season now, having An Liang open, having both sides of the borderlands open, so top and bottom, having Orgolia open as well, so 3 capitals plus a huge area of land, we just don't have the player base for that, in my opinion.
Exactly. I feel the same way. Like it doesn't make sense to have 3 regions open when you have like 600-700 maybe player base online in territory where it would have made sense. Sorry, it would have made sense if EU1 and EU2 were merged, for example. Then obviously you had more players coming in, so it would have made more sense to obviously have everything open. So I guess everyone gets something, and like the casual players can now also, I guess, strive to get a capital. But as of right now, it doesn't make sense because, but the way I see it, any house can get a lot of land in any region.
Yeah, and any semi-competent house could do it. I think one of the biggest things for me is that I've obviously looking at this from a competitive side, because I've always been fighting that top side in territory wars. For me, territory wars are there as one of the top competitive sides of the game. So if you end up pushing out, small houses, be like, oh no, now I can finally get a capital. Is that right? That a small house can take a capital? Because there's 3 capitals now and there's so much land and no one to compete for it? Because for me, territory wars is that top competitive side of the game. You want to be fighting for stuff. And going on from what you said about merging the servers, so I've been suggesting this for a long time, is that they should have merged the servers, I mean, probably 5 or 6 seasons ago now, right? But that doesn't really matter. But they should merge the servers, open up a new one. And then after 3 seasons, for example, that one merges into the main server and they open up a new one. And you have a cycle like that goes through, because then you're constantly pushing new players into the main server, which is, as I say it. But then you're also having that new server for the lower players that can have fun in territory wars and, learn the game. Because at the moment what you have is you've got these 2 servers. EU1 is technically the main server, but all new players are going to EU2, but then we're not gaining any new player base in EU1. So EU1 is slowly just dying, slowly dying off. You do get a few people transferring in between each season, but you're not getting any new fresh blood into there. So they need to be able to just, okay, it's cool. Next season, we're going to merge the 2 servers together, make a new one. You can't transfer to that new one. You can only go there as a new like character, new whatever. So you don't have these players transferring with like a level 4,000 account over to ruin it. And maybe you'll get a few that start a new character, but then they've started a new character. So that's fine. There's going to be more balance. Yeah, they'll have a bit of an advantage, but they're not going to go in with a whole barracks full of units with 15 seasonal units worth of units in there. And it gives a chance that server to grow naturally, grow some new players in. But again, it comes down to player base. They need to have enough in there to make it worthwhile for them doing it. If only 100 people, go into that new server, it's going to be pointless.
Yeah, the only way I see them doing this is obviously, as you said, merge E1, E2, make a new server, but they need to sponsor, I guess, a big creator or someone that's like has actual interest in the game and find it as fun as we do, obviously, as players. Showcase the game and obviously see the good and bad points about the game. And I think it's a good game. I think a lot of people will be attracted by it and hopefully obviously come over. But
yeah, not just have someone there that's playing against AI for half an hour on stream and then it goes off.
The more people get into the new server, the more like new players can play against. Because I think one of the worst things as a new player is being in a siege battle with your pike militia or I don't know your men at arms and the enemy is full 15 new cav, 15 fort, 15 monks. You're like, what's the point of playing?
Exactly, and they'll be having fun. They'll be, I've even been watching a few Twitch streamers that have started up recently because I've seen actually there's been a few new Twitch streamers coming up with like level 50, 80, 100 accounts that have started playing. So there must have been some advertising drive somewhere because I've seen a few new ones popping up. But it's like they'll be playing against bots, then they'll go into level 100 game and they get because once you hit level 100, you match into normal players and they'll get completely stomped. And it's like, how is this fun for them playing it, for people watching it? Like, there needs to be a better way. But again, the main thing is because of the player base. If there was more player base, you wouldn't have that bad matchmaking, which would then not lead to these issues. And we've touched on it in previous episodes, but it's just that level of player base is one of the main issues this game faces right now.
Yeah.
Because it affects so many different parts of the game.
Do we think the Twitch drops have helped potentially be that advertising?
No.
I think yes and no. I think they have some impact. You do notice more people playing during Twitch drops, especially when those Twitch drops are when there's an event running alongside it, like that horse one where you had the hay and the trough thing, whatever it was, because you had to play the game to get those rewards as well as the Twitch drops on the side.
That's what I mean. I think you need to have events in game that give you rewards based on how much you play, rather than like. I guess Twitch drops are good for Twitch streamers, for content creators. That's that's the thing they're good for, right? Obviously, you get something in trade for it, but most creators, I won't make any names. They don't even play the game. They don't do anything about the game. They just come back for the week where the drops are on, have the little 500 viewers, and then just
I would say
away.
there are a few good ones at the moment. There are a few consistent players at the moment that are streaming constantly, and I've been enjoying actually just dropping in, watching them for a bit, and just giving them a bit of viewer base and stuff. There are a couple at the moment that do play regularly, almost every day.
Yeah,
But
I'd like to reward, as you said, I'd like to reward those kind of people, the people that are putting in the work, obviously streaming every day when there's no drops. But the thing is, creators that just come back for the drops are ultimately the ones that have the most viewers during the drops, which is sad for me, obviously, because they clearly they haven't been putting the work in and they don't care as much about the game, but people just tend to go to the stream that has the most views, basically.
Yeah, but just going back to what you touched on as well, and what I spoke about, is like having these events that reward you for actually playing the game, I think are so huge and have been so much fun. Having the one where you had to, every time you won, or you didn't have to win, you lost the siege, you'd still get some of those rewards. It just meant you had to put the time in to play the game. We've had events in the past where it's just log in X amount of days and you get the rewards. Those are worthless. Because it's nice rewards from it, but all you have to do is just log in, then go off again.
Yeah, there's a lot of no beaches players like veterans that literally just play sieges when events are up. Like when I ask them to play, if there's no event, they're just like, "Oh, why should I play? There's nothing to gain." And it's true. Why should you play siege when there's nothing? You don't gain anything from it, and you've done it for the past 5,000 hours. What's the point?
Exactly.
Sorry, Temple, your mic is off. Have you moved it or put something in the way?
Just gonna have a look now if it's better.
That's better.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, let's fix it.
It was working the whole time for me.
No, it was if he was talking around his.
I think it moved slightly to the side like this, so I was kind of talking to the side of it rather than the front.
Yeah, it sounded a bit muffled. Yeah, I completely agree. I think these people that just rock up for the twist drops. It's great for them in terms of the amount of content they benefit from, and there's a lot of people that do stream the game during those times. But it doesn't do anything for the game outside of that time. If it wasn't for my games actually pushing those drops, we wouldn't have at times 3,000 people watching. I think that's the most I've seen in the last couple of months. And 3,000 people watching this game is, as a player that's enjoyed it as much as I have, feels like a bit of a joke. Like it is a good game fundamentally, yet it just does not have a viewer base.
I mean, it's such a unique game. It's so unique in the marketplace, and that's why we're all here. We have such a passion for this game because it is so unique and so much fun to play when it's at its best.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because of previous experiences that it doesn't have the viewer base when we feel it should, or
it just hasn't grown a lot in Europe? I feel like in Asia, for example, the game is a lot bigger than it is in Europe, and I feel like it just hasn't really been advertised or put out as much as they have in Asia or in general. And touching back on the drops thing, sorry to cut you off, is
That's okay.
I'd like, for me, what would make more sense is make the creators that stream regularly have drops rather than every single content creator. So for example, if there's like 10 regular streamers of CB, they have the content creator thing, just give them the drop and not everyone else, if you know what I mean. It would make more sense for me. So whoever's putting the hours in gets the reward.
I don't know if I get in trouble for saying this, but at the moment how it works is they just say, if you want to take part, just message us and we'll make you part of it.
As long as you're a content creator.
Yeah, it's just they put in the content creator Discord and say, whoever wants to take part, just let us know, we'll make you part of it. But they could do that, or maybe not even just the most active, but just have a select few each time that they have a pool they pick from and say, okay, well, maybe it is the case of you haven't played this game in 6 months, you're not going to be put into this, but there's like 30 people that have streamed in the last week or 2 weeks. We'll pick 5 of you at random and put you in.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Something like that. You know, have a very limited amount. But then you could risk then those guys aren't available and then you don't have anyone streaming with drops at the time. You could risk having that. So it's going to be difficult to manage. One thing I would like to touch on, because you mentioned about the advertising, because I actually had a chat with the content creator manager who was talking about the advertising, and he raised a very good point. We're saying, oh, we haven't seen any advertising for it, but then if we already play the game, so we shouldn't see the advertising for it. They have targeted advertising that will go out to people that haven't played the game, because it makes no sense if you see an advert for a game you're already playing, right? So I think they have been doing more work there, because like I said, I have seen more people streaming the game. I've seen more newer players playing, but like we touched on, one of the biggest problems is the veterans that are leaving.
Yeah, that's true.
I see so few new players on EU1. I think most of them go straight to EU2.
You are recommended EU2 as a server when you start, that's the thing. They used to always swap it, and I don't know the last time it was EU1, but I know for a while it's been EU2.
I think when I started, it was also EU2, but I clicked for EU1 basically.
They used to swap it each season, I believe, and they would do one season for EU2, one season. They used to do that when the servers were more balanced, but that was even when we had like EU3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, whatever it was at the time as well. But they used to swap it each season, but I don't know the last time it was EU1, and that's why I think it makes sense. Merge the servers, make a new server that's there for 3 seasons, all new players go to that, merge the servers, make a new server, do a more cyclic rotation like that.
I don't want to really drop names, but I do think this one is one that I'd consider what you suggested about you have these kind of hand-picked streamers that they then get the drops. I would 100% give drops to anyone that streams and casts CBR, the CB rivals. I think that is actually a way you would get people to consistently watch the game and enjoy it. But not only that, you'd get more teams getting involved, and it genuinely is a pretty decent product that CB has put together.
Yeah, I think they could even do like special drops for the rivals, because I know it's not an official My Games tournament, but it's the biggest tournament they've had outside of the My Games ones, and I think at times it's had more viewers than the CBL anyway. And they should be supporting that more. I know they give a good lot of, they give like over €2,500 worth of prizes or something to it, which is incredible when you think about it. But I think if they could promote that more on Twitch, because people will look through Twitch just for tournaments to watch and things for any game. So, the people that just like watching tournaments. So if they pushed more on that, maybe had some drops for tournaments, doesn't have to be much, but it encourages more people to go and watch these tournaments, which encourages more people to get involved in these tournaments, which then grows the community more. Could be a good way of doing it as well.
It also shows people the game at its top level, so it kind of gives that guidance in with at least a ground of expertise on it. Because we know that there's a number of content creators, because they are relatively inexperienced with the game, they give bad advice, and we love
you're always going to have
advice.
that to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, of course. People play the game in their own way. Everyone has their own favorite unit. Everyone has their own favorite class, and everyone might have their own favorite setup of how to play that class. But getting decent expertise in the content creator pool and then passing it on, and because I think everyone when they hit a certain level goes, "Oh, I'm an expert at this point," but you never stop learning in this game. If we fall back to our conversation with Amir last episode, I think that proves to almost everyone that listened to it that there's always more to know, there's always more to learn, there's always more to improve. And if you think you know it all, you're not as good as you think you are.
No one's ever going to know anything. I mean, you even look at the likes of Origin, likes of Eden, I'm sure is the same as well. You'll always have people asking in the house chat, oh, what tech tree do I go with this? What unit do I, how do I build this unit? How do I play this unit? And you always have 3 or 4 different people jumping in, sometimes with differing opinions. Because even in top houses, not everyone's going to know exactly everything about every unit. I don't know about every unit. There are times where I'm going, all right, guys, how do I build this unit? Because I haven't played it before. I just want to give it a try because I haven't played it in like 10 seasons maybe, and it's been changed. No one's going to know every single thing about every single part of this game. And joining these big communities and encouraging more community play like that is only going to help and grow the game more. And going back to the tournaments, like you said, it's like, well, obviously, unless you're watching my team play this season, because we weren't the best, but watching these top sort of level tournament teams, you will learn so much from it, even just from watching that. So having my games actually promote that and support that more would be great as well.
Ghost?
I don't know. For me, it's a touchy one. I like how the community is doing things, but obviously taking their own initiative and pushing their own ideas forward rather than obviously having to wait for my game support or anything like this. For example, Sesu tournament, the deathmatch tournament, that started without any sort of support, and even CBR at the start that started without any support from anything basically. So I like that sense. Obviously, getting more viewers towards it is always a plus, but in the end, that shouldn't come with a cost, if you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
Creators that obviously have this tournament should be able to do what they've been doing, regardless of what uh, the CMs or whatever want them to do or say. So I think we had some episodes with CBR where I don't know too much about it. I've only heard some stories, but where obviously the owners didn't want to risk losing their my games support by doing certain stuff, which is obviously something that shouldn't happen. You know what I mean? Like it's the CBR was this guy's idea. This guy has been running it for like the 3 season that has been running, and just because we have the support from the game we play, we shouldn't be getting told what to do and what not to do.
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Should we bring it back to Territory Wars?
We had a fun little tangent there, but we need to at least get one of those per episode. So
true. Territory war mechanics. Ghost, you mentioned the one about distance between attacks and things like that. What do you have envisaged for that?
Well, for me, as I said, it's a weird one because Stampush said that having like surprise attacks and stuff like this is also fun, and I agree. But talking about like a small house point of view, having someone like Origin being able to walk to your region and speed run every single one of your thieves is probably not the best the best
like when we flipped the whole Borderlands.
Exactly. Or when we went to Ostaria to take every single wild blood thief and whatever. Like, yeah, it's fun, but it's not fun. So
yeah, I can agree to having some sort of protection like that, but then at the same time, like I said earlier, like for me, Territory Wars is the most competitive part of the game, and people need to be ready to fight at that competitive level. Yes, there should be some sort of feature for those smaller houses, but like I said, look at the main region last season. Every single village was untaken. They were basically every single village was AI the whole season until like the last war, obviously, because rewards. What's stopping small houses come and take that and contest that? They won't, because there's enough land open. They don't need to. They can go chill in the Borderlands and hold 3 or 4 cities. And that's where I think that, again, too many regions for next season, like we said earlier, but there needs to be some kind of balance, I do agree.
So would you introduce a cost, like either in-game, like bronze or silver, for moving that region mid-territory
Maybe
war?
maybe it just costs more prestige the further away you are from your like
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
home base, so to
that
speak.
would make sense.
That'd be
So
a
that the
good.
big houses could still do it, but it would cost them a lot of prestige to do it.
And then the little houses could spend their standard amount of prestige and get the war declaration that then prevents a big house from 2 regions away from actually making a declaration and then preventing them from having a fun territory war. That could work. I think that isn't actually too difficult to do. You can have it. Each house sets a capital, right? Or
Even if it's not the distance, just if it's a different region, it's like 3 times the cost or something. Because you have your house headquarters in one area, right? Maybe you can't move your house headquarters mid-war or something. You can only do it at the start, because then at least people can see, right? If they suddenly see that they can go into diplomacy and see, oh crap, that house headquarters is now in my region, they might be coming to attack us. It gives them some warning, right?
Yeah.
Something like that could be a way of doing it. So if you're declaring outside of your house headquarter region, then it costs you triple the amount, double the amount, whatever it may be.
Well, there's a lot
And
of things that could be done. I was also thinking on like a bonus, that like a bonus prestige that you could get by some sort of like revenge feature, where if you've lost something to this house or this alliance, you would get like some bonus prestige to like attack them back, if you know what I mean. That would be worth a lot for like players that, well, for people that fight a lot. Like let's say your second raid loses to their to someone's main raid, you can just retaliate with your main raid and gaining prestige off of that. So
you
that
could
would,
set like a nemesis feature kind of thing.
yeah, that would be cool. I think.
Yeah, it could be an interesting way of doing it. I think in general, I think that the prestige amounts that you get for actually taking land is probably not enough. Because it's like, you'll take a city and then you may lose at that same war, you are worse off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you should be rewarded more for attacking, because it will encourage more people to attack, which is part of the most fun of this game. Because, like, yeah, you might be able to earn more if you hold that land for 4 or 5 territory wars, but the amount you get back for holding land is nowhere near the amount you get for taking something, or the amount for losing something.
I think the amount you lose currently is very punishing, because the number of territory wars you'll see when people decide to move regions because the main region isn't open at the start of the territory war campaign, they go to 0. They go to 0 prestige.
Yeah, I mean, you see it even just like last season before with the Origin stuff. Is like, when the main region opens, you lose every single bit of prestige, because the most important thing is taking those first cities, and then if you lose those first cities, then you're screwed because you have no prestige because you moved from the other region.
Yeah.
And like I said, for me, I care about that this is the top level of competitive. Obviously, tournaments aside, this is the top level of competitive gameplay in this game, and I want to encourage more fights as much as possible, rather than having these like. I, again, don't want to throw shade, but you have these houses that will hold like 5, 6, 7 cities in the Borderlands that aren't getting attacked, that are just chilling there. You know, I want to encourage people to actually attack and experience these fights and encourage more fights, because it's more fun for everyone. No one wants to sit there and do nothing every territory war. Well, some
Like,
houses might like doing it. But
as Ragnarok mentioned, rewards for playing in the main region should be much higher than they are now, or at least much higher than the ones you get for playing inside regions
or in cohorts.
Yeah, or in cohorts.
Yeah.
Like us, obviously having to fight for a whole season and obviously risking our territory and all of this just to get, I don't know, 300 triumphs. While you can play in any Borderland house, have like 10 thieves because no one is attacking you due to the state of the player base, and you get like 5 times the amounts of triumphs.
And not even other houses, right? Look at the cohorts, and not the season just gone, but the season before that, we had loads of our house just sending their alt accounts to go and join the cohorts, because you get like 1,000 triumphs that way. It wasn't quite 1,000; it was a bit less than that. But like, you get more from doing that than you would for joining one of the houses in the Borderlands, for one of even some of the main region houses.
There's not really much. I don't know. There's not really a lot of incentive for you to play for the main goal.
Especially when you look at the number of players in the cohorts this season, seemed a lot more than there has been previously, because there just wasn't people lost kind of the will to fight in the main region because of how unbalanced, I guess, it is at the moment with how the servers line, because of the lack of people. And so they just went, well, we'll just go chill in the cohorts then, because I can earn more doing that anyway. And for me, I want to encourage, like I said multiple times, I want to encourage that top level fighting. I want to encourage more people to build houses, encourage more people to fight in territory wars and have fun, because when you're actually doing it properly, it is the most fun part of the game.
It's fun if you have more people to play with or against, obviously. But by having all these side regions open, and by making it so that playing in side regions gives more triumphs in the main region, you'll get less competition in the main region, which
Yeah.
is shit.
Maybe even if it's just land held in the main region is worth 3 times the triumphs. That would encourage so many more people to come over and compete for villages even, and that's even something, because then that gives more fights for everyone. Because otherwise you look at it and like the last, 4, 5, 6 seasons, it's been 2 alliances fighting basically in the main region.
Yeah.
I feel
which
like
is
it's
not fun for
still
anyone.
very cohort dominated though. So if you had 3 times the triumphs for cohorts defending their village, more people will join cohort, less people will fight. And the
Potentially, but then
cohorts,
maybe it's not for code, maybe it's just those in houses, but it's how you'd manage that, how you'd code that and everything. Maybe it's too difficult, I don't know. But
Yeah.
for me personally, I think you should get rid of the cohorts. Personally, I just don't think they serve a purpose. People have argued in the past that, oh, it's for those that don't really want to try hard in the house, or they just want to have fun in territory wars. You can still do that as a single player. You just make your own house, sit in a one-person house, and you can still go and attack fiefs. I don't see personally the point in the cohorts.
They can be abused so easily, like open
And
it has
edges,
been.
stop blocking. You can do
has
so
been in
much
the
stuff,
past.
and people will do that when there's like a lot at stake, like like winning the season, for example. People will just do that, and I don't know.
I like them trying to include everyone, but I think that when you're looking at the competitive side of the game, you shouldn't have to think about including everyone. Because it is the top competitive side of the game. If someone doesn't want to join a house and fight in territory wars, then they don't have to. They just don't fight in territory wars. I don't see that as a bad thing. You don't have to have every game mode designed to encourage every single player to play it. I don't think that's the right way of doing it personally. Because if it's basically it's kind of like ranked in other games, I guess. Not everyone's going to play it. Some people might want to chill and play the other games. That's fine. They don't get the rewards from ranked. Look at League of Legends. If you don't play ranked, you don't get the rewards. What's the big deal in that? It's not like they've made another. They haven't made a new feature that you can still do the same thing and get the same rewards from, just to encourage encompass those other players. Maybe it's not the best analogy, but point is,
No,
I
it
don't
makes
think you
sense.
have to include
It's
everyone.
pretty close. It's pretty close to what we're dealing with, which is players not playing the game and getting rewarded, which should not be encouraged.
And not everyone will agree with that. There are some players and some mods, for example, that have been in the cohorts for years because they don't want to play in houses, and that's fair enough. But then don't play territory wars.
You don't have to.
If you want
That's
that
the thing,
territory
you
war
don't have to.
experience, join a house. And I don't see that as a bad thing, having to encourage that for players, because I just feel like the cohorts is not a good feature. If you could organize the cohorts in some way, I think that would be a decent system then. If you could encourage, if you could encompass a certain way where you could, like, for example, you could nominate a leader that could then organize a house inside the cohorts kind of thing, but just bigger because it's cohorts and it's a bit more random. That could make it have a function. But you look at it now, and you even look at capital fights when people have joined the cohorts to try and defend the capital, and they'll get maybe 5 people in, and the rest are all just randoms that have joined because why not? So it's not fun for anyone. I just don't see the point in it.
We had the guy from cohorts reach out to us, Godhand. He's played in cohorts pretty much his entire gaming experience. So we're going to have him, hopefully, if this goes into a season 2, we'll have him to actually discuss what he thinks is the good and bad thing of cohorts. But I can't really speak because I've never even joined them. I haven't even put an alt account in either of them.
I joined an alt account into it like 2 seasons ago for some free triumphs. That was it.
I've never been. Yeah.
Never been. I don't know what it's about. I don't know how, even the mechanics of how it works. So I think that was a bit of a critique session. Let's go back to positives and tell stories. Do we have any particularly favourite moments from territory wars that we've experienced? I mentioned mine where I snuck into a village and we hid our entire raid away from people trying to scout us out, so then successfully attack somewhere in their backlines. Do you guys have any stories?
For me, like, it was just always about fighting the best. So my favorite moments have been basically fighting with and against the region, whether that was Irani, whether it was capital fights together. That was obviously, well, many have been. I can't pick a favorite. Like, capital fights with origins have been good, against origin have been good. When origin was first formed and we fought in as I said, Iranian stuff, that was also fun. So I can't just pick one moment. I've just enjoyed fighting at the highest level, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few moments for me, I guess. I mean, one of them was what I mentioned earlier about that whole Daicheng thing, joining that and taking it was really good fun. I mean, anytime I've won is always good fun, obviously. I play to win, it's competitive mode, so that's always going to be fun. I think some of my most favorites were probably the first like major territory wars back in pre-season, when it was like 30 houses on each side fighting each other, which was just insane. There's just the amount of fights you would see and how much organization went into it was so much fun. Being in push or kick and having those fights, 23 of us defending a fief against 67 attackers and still holding out the entire war, just insane. Like that was such a fun moment just to be part of that. And just Origin in general, we've had so much fun being part of Origin through the wins and the losses. We started out smashing our heads against Eden, wiping Nexus out as well to start with. Some really good fun to start with, and growing into the house it has been. And it's been such a long-lasting house because we started out from nothing, because we started out just throwing our heads against Eden, which at the time were the strongest house going. Part of our success we have to thank to Eden because we trained up our core on how to lose, not just how to win, but how to lose, how to maintain that mental, and not just crumble like so many houses have done since. These other super houses that we made last a season, they lose, they crumble, and they die, and they don't play anymore. We've seen that so many times.
People wanna improve by losing or by doing anything like that, which is a shame.
Yeah, it just goes, and just going on to it again, it's like my raid the last couple of seasons. When we first made it, it was just full of random no-names, basically what everyone else was telling me, and it was just crap. We were losing every fight, but we were learning every fight, and we got better and better, and got to the point where last season I would say we beat anyone basically. Obviously, we didn't fight some of the top raids, like we didn't have to fight the capital raid, obviously, but we had some really good fights and held against some really tough opponents. And going from where we started at to losing to basically the worst raid in the enemy alliance to holding out against their best one in this last season is such an accomplishment for me and my raid. I'm so proud of the boys and girls that were in there, that we've come so far, and that for me was really fun, just seeing their growth. And from the shot quarter side, seeing how much better they got each war was just really fun and really satisfactory.
Are houses the best part of Conquerors Blade?
Yes.
I think I'd say yes. Obviously, tournaments are fun, but tournaments, I guess, you prepare for it, you play for it, and then it's done, right? Like,
yeah. But I would also say tournaments largely start off with a core of one house, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that leads into that as well. But definitely, I think the houses are the most fun part of this game.
They have always been for me the main part. Like that's how you make your friends. That has temperature, so that's how you build your core of people. I guess you want to play with or play competitively with. So
yeah,
like I say, I've got people like Center, for example, that I've been playing with since pre-season 1. And we ended up making Origin together after doing loads of different things. Obviously, I went and made POC after a while after Werewitz. He had gone and joined Nothing Gloria. I think he joined the season after POC, and I was then in Jesters or something. I can't remember at the time. And then we just went, this is not working. We need to do something different. Let's make a new house. Sure, you bring those 15, 20 guys. I'll bring these 15, 20 guys. Let's see what happens. And just growing Origin from that, building that relationship, having that long-lasting relationship with him as well is... And I've had loads of other people like that, where I've had these long-lasting relationships I built up from being in a house with them. And I would just encourage anyone that's listening, if you're not in a house, join a house. It can be any house. You'll learn a lot from it, and you might move on to other houses. You may not start in the house you're going to finish off. We've spoken in other episodes how many different houses I've been in the past and my growth from that. But I've still maintained a core group since then anyway, and made so many friends that way. So it is a big part of this game, and I would encourage everyone to get into a house as soon as you can.
I think we spoke about it in the Plumption episode about how veterans pass on knowledge. Amir mentioned that he attached himself to top level players and learned as quickly as he could from them, and he only did that as being part of a house. From my own experiences, I've met up with people internationally, and I've met them and their families because of houses I've met or been in as part of this game. You make genuine friends. I can't recommend it enough.
I've met a lot.
If you don't like where you are, leave as well.
Yeah,
you shouldn't feel like you're tied to a house.
I feel like a lot of leaders make you feel like it's a very bad thing to leave the house and stuff like this. But realistically, it's a game. Obviously, you play where you have the most fun and wherever is best suited for you. So
I think it depends on how you do it as well, though, right?
Exactly.
Like if you leave mid-season to go join the house your current house is fighting, that's a bit shitty. But if you're just saying, right, guys, I just don't fit in here. This isn't for me. I'm going to go try something else, or do what Drayton did, finished out the season with us, and then has left and joined our enemies. Bit of an asshole, but it is what it is. But you know what I mean? Like, there's no bad blood there. You finish the season, you say, I want to try something new. You go somewhere else. You shouldn't feel like you're tied to house. It's a bit different in my case because obviously I helped create Origin, so I don't want to leave Origin. Unless I have a really good reason to, because it's like, that is part of me. While I may not be in like main leadership now because I stepped down a few seasons ago, it is still my baby, so to speak. Like, I still have a lot of love for this house basically because I helped
As
create it
a
and I've been here for so long.
as a leader, it's way different, obviously, than
Mm.
how it
But
would
then if
be.
you are a leader, you're not having fun, and you're in a small house, look at merging your house in another house. Look at doing. There's other options you can do as opposed to just leaving. You can help get other people into leadership with you and try and share the load. Because a lot of it, when it comes to leadership, because I was speaking from experience, a lot of leadership don't play the game as much as the regular player. Because you're doing Diplo calls, because you're organizing a lot of stuff in the background, you kind of lose interest in the game a lot. Just speaking from personal experience, it's one of the reasons I stepped down from it. Because I was doing leadership, I was doing shot calling territory wars, I was doing tournaments, I had so much stuff going on. This game became a second job to me, basically. Because I was coming back from work and just sitting on it the whole time, and I was like, I'm just not having fun anymore. There was a period of a few, maybe even 2 or 3 seasons where I was literally just logging in, doing 5 AI games, doing my dailies, and logging out again because I just didn't have fun. Because I was doing all these tournaments, territory wars, all that kind of stuff. And so you do need to be able to share that load and be able to have someone else that can help you with that. So if you're in these small houses and you're struggling with what you want to do, just try and get the people to help you, or reach out. Merge your house. Like I said, there's other options there as opposed to just leaving. But if you need to, then leave. You shouldn't be tied down to it. You got to do what's best for you at the end of the day.
So this season's got Angliang, Orgolia as side capitals, and then Conqueror City as the main capital, and alongside Conqueror City is the gates of the capital. Let's just take a Shotcaller's breakdown of the side capitals to start with.
I would say the 3 maps are
fire.
some of the worst maps in the game that they've picked for capitals.
Exactly.
If we look at how easy they are to attack, for example, because that's what we're going to look at, right? Because capitals are the end game. They're the end game content. They are historically very easy to hold. Not many houses have lost them. Eden. Not many houses have lost capitals, but these ones are definitely some of the hardest ones, right? And we go into a few reasons for that. But you look at historically, Orgolia, Anliang, Conqueror City. These, on E1 anyway, these have never been lost apart from one on Conqueror City years ago, back when in the early seasons of the game when no one really knew what they're doing still. So it's like some of the main reasons for this, obviously, spawn points are a big thing. Anliang especially, the spawn point is literally a couple of meters away from the end point. You can spawn in and it's a straight line straight to the end.
For the defenders, that is.
For the defenders, yeah, for the defenders. So the defenders' spawn point is so close to that end cap, and then the attacker spawn point is so far away, and the fact that it's just a straight line, you can't even block it off, really. It's so easy for defenders to get onto that base point to be able to defend it. Especially in Cav meta, which it normally is when it comes to that map for some reason. It always seems to be Cav meta when that map comes around. Similar thing for Orgolia, but Orgolia is a bit different just because it's such a big map and there's that really awkward spawn point by sea, which the defenders can still spawn from.
Let's go back to Angliang. Ghost.
Yeah, let's go one map at a time, yeah.
What experience have you got attacking, defending Angliang?
Well, attacking wise, I wasn't really there. I was short calling our second raid when Eden was attacking the capital, but I feel like it's a very hard map to attack. As Tampushot said, like last point is very hard due to the reason that you literally spawn 1 meter away from the point. There is many ways to block your way to last point, but there's also a lot of ways to flank where you can just destroy the enemy on any setup they have. Although I will say X is okay-ish, like it's doable. It's not too hard, but compared to maps like I guess Algolia, I found Anliang. I personally find Anliang a bit harder than Algolia.
I would say X is quite easy for Anliang.
Yeah.
Again, because of the spawn points. So Anliang is different because it's got those 2 spawn points, right?
It really does depend on what the meta is. On Algolia, for example, if the meta is full cav, then it's going to be very, very, very hard for you to get the rolls, right? Like
that just reminds me of the
Liao
spam.
You just get clapped as soon as you try to do anything. So
that's why Orgolia is my least favorite map, because the last time I probably played it in a competitive format was when you guys held it and it was Liao meta and you couldn't climb. Even if we had like 6 or 7 guys there, you would just come with 1 cav and wipe all of us. It was insane.
I was just on dual pressing 2 on my Liaos and destroying everything they climbed up. So it was very easy.
It was insane. I hate the Orgolia map personally, but yeah, just go back to Anliang. One thing I do like about Anliang is that there's those 2 spawn points on opposite sides of the map, so you can do more of a bait and rotate. But that's only applicable to the X. Once you've taken the X, I would say that the base is almost impossible just because of the spawn points. Obviously, if you have a massive skill difference and you can just wipe without losing anything, then you can probably take it, But when you're looking at these sort of evenly matched teams, which you normally have in capitals, it is so difficult to take a point like that when the base is defender spawn is right there.
I feel like the hardest map to attack next season will probably be the shield of the capital, or the walls.
I think Congress would be an interesting one, right? Because we haven't had proper fights on there since season 3.
That's true.
That was only one season of it.
Yeah, and the last time it was a map. What was it? Season 9. I want to say when you guys held it, no one attacked it. So we don't have any, and especially because we've had those map changes since then as well. We don't know how it's going to work. No one's played on Congress City because it hasn't been in the siege rotation for months. At least I haven't seen it in months. So it's going to be interesting to see how that can be attacked now. I think base point's probably easier than the X on Congress City. I would say the X point is the hardest part. Once you take that, base point is normally easier because there's only the one spawn for defenders, and it's down that giant ramp of stairs. So it's not the best thing to cav charge down because you can get 40s at the bottom, which can be harder to clear. So I think it's probably easier to take the base on there out of all of them, personally. But the X is the hard part.
My issue is that if you can't have your cav go through the breach, then the map stays the same as how it would have been back then when rabbits took it, for example.
But you can still get cav from the left side resupply though.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the breach technically should favor obviously cav spam, no? But if you can't, if your cav can't go through the breach, then I don't really see how the breach makes it any easier to attack that map, if you know what I mean.
Maybe you can get Falcos out there that can shoot through the breach onto the stairs. I don't know because I haven't seen the angle, but that's close enough. You might be able to do something like that to get safe Falcos, so to speak. I think
we had the plan to defend it in season 9.
But like I said, it's such a different map now. Such a different map to how it was back in season 2 and 4. No one has experience on it because, like I say, it hasn't even been in sieges. I think when they first changed it that season in 9, maybe it was in siege rotation then for a bit, but I haven't seen it in siege rotation really since then. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out. But I would say it's definitely easier to take the base point on that one. Out of the 3 that we've got this season, I would say that's the easiest ones to capture base.
So I've got some footage of when it was attacked in season 9 on EU2. And the thing that killed the attacks was the distance of the spawn to X. You have to run up a cliff, essentially. You have to go either all the way to the left up the main stairs or all the way to the right up the small stairs. The towers didn't work, and the ladders are just impossibly long that you can't actually climb them.
What I would like to see is something similar to Algolia, right? Where when you capture those resupplies, you then spawn on them. That would be an interesting thing.
And Tyrrell, do you remember Tyrrell, where you could capture that back supply and then spawn there?
Yeah. So I'd like to see that with Congress City because it is such a big map, and like you say, the attackers spawn is so far away. Even once you take the X, it's still, I'm pretty sure their spawn is still the front gate or the bottom of the stairs, which is a long way to go to the base point. Not as long as other maps, but it's still a long way. So if you can take that top resupply, maybe the top right resupply, and you can spawn there, because that's not the worst thing for the defenders. It's still decently far away, but it's closer than the normal spawn. That could be an interesting part for it. But again, it depends how the map plays. People haven't played on it in a very long time, and depends on the meta next season as well.
Yeah, it heavily depends on the meta. The meta will basically dictate how the fights will go on those maps, because without anything to really clear the walls, I think Algolia is okayish. Like I said, last point on Algolia, I personally feel like is doable. Like it's very open.
Yes and no. Just talking from personal experience, which again, this was a very long time ago because this was back in season 6? No, season 5, season 6. In push or kick times, it's the problem with Algolia for me is that there's 2 spawns for defenders, and you can't block that one spawn, so they can always spawn behind you as you're pushing last point, basically. So if you're looking at it from the siege perspective, where C is, that resupply above C, they can spawn above that, and they can spawn it the whole time. I think what would make that a balanced map, or more balanced, is once the attackers take that resupply behind C, I should lose that spawn. But that would make that a more balanced map.
I think that's how it was intended, but that was some sort of bug or something.
We raised it in the past, and they were just like, "No, it's intentional." I'm pretty sure it was raised in the past because it makes it so difficult. Because because of the spawns, right? Because you still spawn on the X, you spawn in that little fort down the front, and if you're trying to push base point and they're spawning directly on it, You just get flanked from behind if you try and push from the left. If you push from the right, it's so much further away that they can just push back to the X while you're out of the position. You've got to leave people there trying to defend it. You can't push from that left side behind C because you will just get flanked. It makes it so much more.
In Ang Liang as well, if you cap the back supply in Ang Liang, it changes the spawn slightly for the defender.
I think it's slightly, but it's not really impactful.
Not really impactful. So
I think it shoves it back like an extra 5 meters or something like that. So it's still good, but it's not like game changing, if that makes sense.
So the mechanic exists is kind of like what I'm.
Yeah, and like you said, they've got it on Orgolia as well and stuff. Where the spawns will change when you take resupplies, even from the attacker's points. They should be able to do it from the defender's point as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely work to be done on capitals because capitals historically are very, very defender favored.
Yeah.
The only ones that are different are obviously you've got Dai Cheng, you've got Reginopolis, but they are still kind of defender favored. It's just they're the easier ones to take.
I think they should still remain defender favored. They
should do, but it should be more balanced than it is, I would say.
Yeah.
Or at least in regards to, I think, the spawns. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like spawns should be a bit better than they've been in the past because I feel like obviously taking, for example, 40 seconds just to resupply your push is a bit big, but obviously I understand that that they need to be somewhat defense sided because of all the work you put through the season to actually get them right.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need to be defender favored, right? But they also need to reward the attackers for like a big wipe because at the moment it's like you could wipe the entire point. 5 seconds later, there are 15 people there again because they literally spawn 5 seconds away from it. Looking at An Liang specifically, even if you look at Conquerors City, for example, the spawn is at the top of the stairs onto base point, and then the attackers are all the way down the bottom of the main stairs in the front gate. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. Might be wrong when they changed the map. They may have changed the spawns. I don't know. So apologies for that. But I think they could do it with having it so that they're closer than they are, but it's still the defenders are closer, so they have that advantage. But then it gives the attackers that sort of reward for being able to get a good push off. Because at the moment, like you said, you can wipe them. They'll be back there within 5-10 seconds, which is not very rewarding. You're then 40 seconds to a minute away. How are you ever going to win that unless you just keep wiping them for free, basically?
Yeah, the offset of how long it takes a defender to reinforce versus how long it takes an attacker to reinforce. I think realistically, mechanic wise, it should always favour the defender.
Yeah,
particularly for home point. But
it should favour the defender.
Closing that gap is something that I think they should definitely try and do over the course of the season. Even if it is 20 seconds difference between how long it takes a defender to get to point versus an attacker, I think 20 seconds is a decent amount of time. And if you're taking cav versus infantry, they may well get there at roughly the same time, depending on the cav. I think given that every season new unit next season is an infantry unit, we're probably going to be in an infantry meta.
Yeah.
So you've then got to consider
I don't know. I think
depends what they do with
still, like
the Yanredo
still does very well. So
from what changes they make from the PTR, because I mean the new tier 5 can kill the current tier 5 cav, the Yanredos, right? But it's not a good trade. Like they can wipe them for free, but then they've got a long cooldown on their ability, so they can wipe them with their one ability, their little charge. Is that enough to be able to stop teams just going, we're going to take all new cav? How are you going to stop that? Well, now I've used that one ability, I've killed one of your new cav, you've got 14 more coming around the corner, how am I going to deal with that? Kind of thing. So I'm hoping that they tweak the anti-cav abilities of this new tier 5 a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But yeah, definitely the meta next season is going to be interesting. I think there's definitely a lot of... It could be a very good, fun season, and I say that as in it could be a melee season, because for me, melee meta is always much more fun than cav meta. I think cav should be strong, but it shouldn't be able to go in first by itself and kill everything. It should be a follow-up unit that can, once the fight starts, if they don't have any anti-cav there, you can get that flank, you can wipe 100 units, sure, but you shouldn't be able to charge in front and do that. That's always been the thing for me.
I agree.
Yep. Right, let's do a small little summary, I think, to finish this off. The things that basically our discussion has recommended to someone listening to this is, first of all, join a house if you're interested in doing territory wars. You can do the cohort experience, but it's so much different, and we all agree it's more rewarding to do the house experience. Is there anything else?
Monetarily rewarding, because then cohorts is normally better, but
True. In-game rewards, but in terms of
Yeah.
just like enrichment in life, let's go with that one. What other recommendations do we think we'd give to players that are looking to do territory war, or looking to return to territory war, or have never even done it before?
I
Just
think we've
make
already covered,
sure,
joining a house is the biggest thing.
yeah, joining a house and soaking as much as you can from people that have more experience, obviously, and obviously know more.
Just being open to learn is the biggest thing. You know, some people can't take criticism in this game, and they're the people that get stuck and then can't improve. They get stuck in that little cycle of being sort of like a mid-tier player, so to speak, because they don't want to listen to the people. They're just like, nah, what I'm doing is better, and they won't listen to those more knowledgeable, experienced players. So being open and being willing to learn is probably the second most important thing for me. And then thirdly, probably communication. You know, as long as you're a communicative person, you will learn a lot more, and you will have more impact in territory wars as well, and you'll have more fun doing it.
Yep. And any mistakes that people should avoid?
Do not slot block supply.
Yeah, never run back to a supply when you're defending or attacking. Just never run back to a supply for another unit. Just play one unit and die. That's it. Just play one unit and die.
Yeah, and I think my final point would be, if you are having a conversation with someone in your room, turn your mic off. During territory war, anyway.
Yeah, the amount of times you have like children running around, or the partner comes in, starts talking, or the mum comes in, starts talking to you like, dude, mute yourself, what are you doing? Shut up.
Baby potatoes.
Fuck the baby potatoes.
Fuck the potatoes! Ghost, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you if they're trying to find you on social medias or YouTube or Twitch?
I'm retired from Twitch, but I usually just pop some videos on YouTube, so that's basically where people can find me, I guess.
The link will be down below for anyone
Yes,
that's interested.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, boys.